Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming today. I would like to welcome the participants and the speakers from different parts of the world who participated in last week event, this event that started Wednesday, November the 15th. It is an event organized by the participants in the SUSI Scholars Program that we met in New York this year, particularly University of New York, and we agreed to organize international lecture series at the Department of English Language, Faculty of Arts and Humanities, University of Cairo. Other initiatives will come as well. This event is organized by the MA in Intersectional Studies in Linguistic and Literary Discourses in collaboration with the English Department at Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Cairo, Tunisia, and it is entitled Global Fulbrighters Transdisciplinary Lecture Series. But particularly, it addresses diverse perspectives in language, culture, and society from Multifaceted Journey. Last time, I was absent, unfortunately, but successfully my friend and colleague, Dr. Kamel Abdewi, replaced me. And we had fascinating lectures from Dr. Eva Ciara from Poland, from Dr. Wedja Apadu Ramsamy from Mauritius, and from Dr. Pierre Richard Medor from University of Chile and Haiti. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank them very much on behalf of the English department. I would like also to thank our guests today, the speakers who will animate today's session. And the sessions will concern a number of topics that are extremely important, chosen by the speakers themselves. Ana Gabriela Hernandez Salazar, our colleague from Universidad Técnica Nacional, Costa Rica. Sorry for my pronunciation, Ana. And her lecture is about translation ethics. The second speaker is going to be Dr. Namayo Bachiota from University of Zambia. And her lecture is going to be about women in politics, the case of Zambia. The third speaker today is going to be Dr. Shahrayar Haidar from University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. And his lecture is going to address human diversity, disability, and ability, general understanding. So I would like, on behalf of the audience here, to thank them very much, to inform them that the audience is composed of English language students, teachers, and the translation students who speak English, Arabic, and French. This session is recorded. And just as last time, the recording of last time's session is available now on the YouTube channel of the English department. It is shared also on the Facebook page of the English department, as well as my Facebook account as well. So it can be recorded. Speakers also who would like to record themselves are also most welcome to record. You will enjoy 20 minutes to present your lecture. And then we move to speaker 2, then speaker 3, before leaving the floor for the comments, remarks, questions from different participants online and in-person participants here in Tawfiq Bakar room at Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Cairo. Without further delay, I would like to leave the floor to our colleague and friend, my colleague and friend, Ana Gabriela Hernandez Salazar. Nice to see you, Ana.
Thank you so much, Mimoun. And I'm so happy to be here today. And I brought my flag because this represents my country and your country. I would like to know if everybody can hear me.
Yes, we do.
Can you
Thank
hear
you
me?
very much. We
Excellent.
can see you also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Let
you,
me
Ana.
share my screen. Sure. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see it? Dr. Maliti, can we see my screen right now?
Yes, confirmed.
Okay.
You can see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, today I'm going to be talking about translation ethics, and I'm so glad to be here. My name is Gabriela Hernandez, and I'm an associate professor at National Technical University here in Costa Rica. And well, I wanted to greet you in Arabic too, so I wrote it here. Salam alaikum, marhaba everyone, and bonjour à tous. We're going to first start. I'm going to show you where my country is in case you didn't know where my country is. So we are located in Central America, really, really far from where you guys are. And yeah, that's Costa Rica right here. Just for you guys to know, the land area of Costa Rica is 3.2 times smaller than Tunisia. So if Tunisia is a small country compared to its surrounding neighbors, imagine the size of Costa Rica. The official language is Spanish, and we have no army, which is something that sometimes surprises people as well. And the literacy rate is 98%. So we can say we're a highly educated country. And well, so that's my university, the National Technical University, that was founded in 2008 as a university per se. And I was reading online that the Cairo University was constituted in 2004. So they're both very, I would say, recent or young universities. And well, something important, the National Technical University is public university, it's the fifth public university in Costa Rica. And why did I choose this topic? Well, my university, starting next year, will incorporate a new program for the English as a foreign language major. So these translation ethics is going to be one of the topics that we're going to be teaching in those classes. It's going to be myself and another colleague who's also joined in this session as well. So we're going to be the teachers in charge of the translation courses at the university, and we're going to start. The university doesn't have a translation program right now, but it's going to incorporate it in hopefully in 2026. So when we think of ethics, that's a lot of things come to our head, right? And the Oxford Dictionary says that the ethics is all the moral principles that governs a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So when we think of ethics, we think of integrity, moral, principles, value, right, fairness, responsibility, conscience, honor, and all of this. So that's what ethics is to us, right? And why is ethics important in what we do? Well, we have translation students here, and we can talk about it later, but I wanted to start with an example in history. I'm going to go back in history as far as the 1500s. And with the example of the fall of the Aztec Empire, we have this very important figure in history, which is Malintzin Tenepal. She was the first known woman interpreter in our history in the New World, let's say in the new continent that was conquered by the Spaniards. So La Malinche, it is called La Malinche, is something that we coined in Spanish somehow. And she spoke Nahuatl because she belonged to the Aztecs, but she was sold as a slave to the Mayans. And then later in her life, she also learned Spanish. So when the Spaniards came to our part of the world, they were in Mexico, to the north of where I am right now. They brought another person who spoke Spanish and Mayan. He was a person from Spain. They wanted to communicate with the Aztecs, but they couldn't because the other person only spoke Mayan. They had sold or they had offered Malintzin to the Spaniards as another slave. They couldn't communicate, and somehow Malintzin raises her hand and she's like, I can help you. So she was interpreting from Nahuatl into Mayan, and the other person was interpreting from Mayan into Spanish. That's how they managed to communicate. So Malintzin was a very important person in translation, and a very, let's say, a key, how can I say this? Yeah, the conquest of the Spaniards happened a great, like I would say, part because of her, because of Malinche. Why is it called La Malinche? Well, La Malinche comes from Malintzin, and the Spaniards couldn't pronounce Malintzin. They couldn't understand the sin ending, so they would say Malinche, Malinche. And now Malinche, especially in Mexico, is a synonym of traitor. And that's what brings us to ethics. Why traitor, you might ask? Well, it's a person who betrays a friend, a country, or a principle. And a principle is one of the key concepts of ethics. Why do they say that she was a traitor? Well, she was a traitor because the Spaniards came, they killed a lot of indigenous people, and they say that it was her fault because she helped them. But other um, historians argue that she was not a traitor, that she was just a slave, that she didn't do, and she didn't know any other thing in her life. She was a slave. Most of her life, she was a slave too. So that she was just doing whatever she could not to be killed, let's say. So that is a concept. La Malinche is the first woman interpreter in history, but at the same time is the first traitor. Is a person who violated ethics because she didn't stand for her people and she was on the side of the Spaniards. So that's a little bit of history before getting into business, let's say. So ethics in translation. The key concept of ethics in translation is that the translator should strike a balance between foreign ethical aspects of a translation, especially those aspects that are related to the transfer of form and content of the source text into the target language. That is what a balance between that and producing a target text that can fulfill the target language that can fulfill, sorry, in the target language, the appropriate function for which it has been produced. So, like translators should produce the a translation that is not only faithful, but also can fulfill the function that the original text had at the beginning. When we think of that, we think of cultural issues that make us reconsider the ethics. There are many theorists that they just stick to exoticizing or foreignizing. And what is this? Like when we have a text that has a lot of cultural things that we cannot translate. For example, something in Arabic. If we have a text in Arabic, it's a total different culture from mine. There are many words that we do not have in my language. So some translators say we should keep it like that, and that is exoticizing or foreignizing. It says in here, it means bringing the readers of the translation towards the source language culture, offering them some sense on how that culture sounds and feels, but not reading like a text written in the target language. So when you read a text like that, you're going to find a lot of words in italics with the word in the source language. There is a new one that is another way of translating, which is domesticating or naturalizing. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, especially translation students, is to move the text towards the readers of the translation, not the original, the readers of the translation, making the text more accessible and familiar, but blurring or even erasing cultural difference. So I think ethics means like keeping a balance between exoticizing, foreignizing, and domesticating. There are some institutions, many institutions around the world, and that advocate for the ethics in translation. There are so many that I cannot mention them all. There is also one in Tunisia. I was reading about it. We have one in Costa Rica as well. Some of the examples that I'm going to be using today are from the ATA, the CITO, and I think one from the Israel Translations Association. So we have the CITO, which is, I'm not going to say that in French. My French is really bad. It is the European Council of Literary Translators Association. And in Tunisia, there is the Circle of Interpreters and Translators. Then we have the Association des Traducteurs Littéraires de France, and the United Nations also released a code of ethics for interpreters and translators employed by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. So they also created a code of ethics for these court proceedings after what happened in the former Yugoslavia and in the Balkan War. So there are many codes of ethics, and every country has a different one, or every association has a different one. Usually, when we think of translation, we think of literature, poetry, but we tend to forget that we also do, as translators and interpreters, we do very meaningful work, and we work in very sensitive domains such as law, medicine, social work, in court proceedings. We work with human rights, with immigration. And that's why ethics and codes of ethics are really important for us as translators. Um, I read many different codes of ethics, and especially the CIRO and the ATA share many things in common. And these are the most important points in these different codes of ethics across different countries. The first one is that a translator should have a very sound knowledge of the language from which she translates, which is the source language, and of the language into which she's working, the target language. Um, Also, it says in the Israel Translators Association, they say you have to commit yourself to the highest performance standards, ethical behavior, and business practices. So that means the translator should have knowledge and should be a well-trained person. It cannot be just a person who speaks the language and who knows a little bit about the other language and just, okay, let me do it. No, that's that's why you have to go to school to be a translator, or you there are also cases in which you are a sworn or official translator, in which you have to sign some codes of ethics as well. Then we have again the CITO and ATA. It says the translator must be aware of his or her limitations and refrain from translating material which is outside his or her scope or the sphere of knowledge required. That's why we also have a specialization. There are medical interpreters, there are medical translators, there are people who are more into technical texts. In my master's program, I did my thesis in anthropology, so I'm more into social sciences. So we should specialize in that area. And it says in here to honestly represent work within our qualifications, competencies, capabilities, and responsibilities, which is pretty much the same idea. So as I said before, different codes of ethics across different countries and institutions, they have similar things, of course. It also says a translator agrees to respect confidentiality when the assignment involves consulting confidential documents. I'm going to give you two more examples later on. It says, the ATA says, to hold in confidence, not divulge, and protect privileged and or confidential information obtained in the course of her work. That I think it's ethical responsibilities fall upon all professionals. Like for us, like professors, we cannot tell people like the results of the exams, or we cannot talk about students' performance if it is not if nobody is asking, if it doesn't have anything to do, if it is not the principal, or we are not allowed to disclose that information. So I think it's the same for interpreters. If something is happening in the office, we are given a translation, we do our work, and we are not allowed to discuss anything with anybody. And another important point that was shared across many different codes of ethics. It says to convey meaning between people, organizations, and cultures accurately, appropriately, and without bias, depending on the context of the source, purpose, readership, and audience. Okay, so to convey meaning, a lot of people think that translating is putting one word from one language into another one, but it's not a word, it's translating in meaning. not necessarily words. It says in here, the translator shall refrain, this is from Cyril, shall refrain from introducing any tendentious modifications to the thoughts or words of the author and from cutting or adding to the text without the express permission of the author or the right holder. So we as translators, we always have a boss, we have a publishing company, we have an institution who is asking us to perform the translation. So we need to stick to the meaning and stick to the purpose of the translation. And it says here, we have to convey meaning accurately. I have this example in French. It said, les apparences sont trompeuses. Sorry about my pronunciation. And if we translate word by word, we wouldn't have the same meaning, because the phrase in English is, you can judge a book by its cover. And that's what we have to do as translators. We have to look for the meaning in the target language that sounds more or is more familiar to the readers, but it doesn't change the original, right? And we, like, especially with idioms and phrasal verbs and that, and proverbs, we do not have the same proverbs, but we have similar ones that transmit a similar knowledge or meaning, let's say. Well, my experience, I'm going to talk briefly about my experience, and especially two situations in which, and this one as an interpreter, not as a translator, but I'm talking about these experiences because they reflect situations in my life when I had to make a decision. When you're translating, sitting on your desk, you can make decisions, but not on the spot. When you're an interpreter, you have to make those decisions on the spot. What happened to me, and this experience happened in Kazan, Russia in 2019, it was an experience in which I was faced with an ethical dilemma, let's say. And why is that? It was a technical competition. I don't know if you're familiar with word skills. We as translators, I was a translator / interpreter, we had access to privileged information. We had the contents of the final task because we had to translate the final exam with what it was like a pop quiz, let's say. So we couldn't disclose that information to anybody. We were kept in a room. We couldn't talk to anybody outside of the other interpreters because we had really important information that we couldn't reveal. And potentially revealing that information would make somebody win or somebody lose, let's say. So I remember we were not allowed to leave the room, but at some point I told the person in charge, like, I really, really, really have to go to the bathroom. And he said, like, you can. And I'm like, but I really have to go. So he took me, he walked me, and he waited outside. When I went into the bathroom, I ran into a colleague. And we were a really small delegation, and I ran into a colleague. And the first thing she asked is like, what is going to be on the test? And we are there, nobody's around us. We were the only two people. And I had to tell her, I can't tell you. And I didn't tell her anything. I left, and then fortunately my competitor, the person I was interpreting for, did a great job, and we won a medal and everything. But imagine if I had said something and somebody realizes about it. Probably my country would have lost a medal, or I would have been expelled or something. That was a situation in which, ethically speaking, I did a good job. And there is this other example at a wedding, a bilingual wedding in Costa Rica in 2016, which I think I wasn't ethical, but I'm going to explain what happened here. So there was a difference in opinion between the pastor and the groom's father. So this conversation started really nice, but the groom's father had a couple of drinks inside. So he was, when people drink too much. And the conversation got a little heated, and I de-escalated the conversation because I think they were going to start a big argument. They were not using gestures, so that helped a lot. So I kind of like used different language. I changed some words here and there because I wanted to avoid conflict, and I didn't want the groom's father and the pastor to get into a fight in the middle of a wedding. I told my professor, my interpretation professor, I was a student back then, and she was like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, as an interpreter, you're supposed to say everything exactly as it is. And I told my professor, yeah, I know, but it was a wedding. I didn't want to cause a big problem right there. And most importantly, I got paid just to interpret the wedding, not to interpret the fights. So I think it wasn't ethical, but at the same time, I did it because I didn't want people to see them arguing or get the conversation kind of like more heated. Um, well, and now this question goes to you guys. I'm about to finish my presentation. It says, what would you do? You are one, this is a situation. You are one of the translators of the last book of a best-selling saga, and you have signed an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, with the publisher. After all the hard work and before the original and the translated books are launched, you decide to accept an invitation to a small gathering with close friends who have followed the saga in the movies, but they're not big fans. They ask you, because they know you're the translator of the saga, to tell them how the book ends. Would you tell your friends about it? Why or why not? I want you to get your phones. I want you to scan the code if you can, and to answer the questions. The questions, just one question. What would you do? I have the answers in here. So I want you to go scan the code. I want you to go scan the code and answer what would you do in that situation. Let me give you like 1 minute. I forgot to set the timer. Okay, nobody has responded so far. Let me see if it's working. No answers yet. I don't know. Dr. Meliti, is it working? Is the QR code working for you guys?
I guess they're going to answer the questions later when they send their phones, etc.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. I'll send them the link, and you should be able to receive the answers later.
Okay. All right. So that was my question for you. I'm pretty sure you have other questions for me too. And I would like to close with some recommendations for ethics and translation. I would say that you need to have a clearly defined scopus or purpose for your target text. You need to know where the translation is going. You need to ask a lot of questions to the publisher, to the person who gave you or who commissioned the translation to you. Also, is your obligation to keep in constant training. And there are associations that usually hold trainings and conferences all year long. Remain impartial and declare potential conflicts of interest. If there's something like, for example, you're interpreting or you're translating a document that can potentially harm anybody around you, or if you don't want to have certain information, or I don't know, I'm thinking of this one at the top of my head. If you're given a translation, you have to translate a document which goes against your values. I think you also have the right to say like you're not going to translate that because it conflicts with your beliefs as well. It said, well, I recommend you to also keep your own glossaries because that guarantees the quality of your translations, and keep a list of colleagues who work in areas different to yours, because in case you cannot translate something because you're not good at translating contracts or law or medicine, things related to medicine, then you have somebody who does, and then that also guarantees the quality of the translation for that client in particular. And also the last one, and the most important of all, respect other cultures. I would say that that is one of the most important recommendations that we as translators should have. Avez-vous des questions? Questions? Well, I'm going to wait for the questions after the presentations of my colleagues, Namayuba and Xavier. So, gracias, thank you, merci. And that will be all for me. Professor
Thank you very
Melody,
much,
thank you
Anna.
so much.
Thank you so much, Gabi, for this wonderful presentation. In fact, that tackled an important issue that is the main concern of several students here in our room, translation students. I have second-year BA students of translation. And we talked about parts of what you're saying, but actually you covered it in additional details with relevant examples. And I would like to thank you also for adapting the lecture itself to meet the requirements and the needs of the audience we have here. I have a number of questions, but priority is for my students, to be honest with you. So the questions, we leave them at the end of the session, if you may. So please take notes of the questions you would like to ask or the comments. I remind you also that the link that Gabi has shared, I sent it to you. You can check your MA1 students, you can check your WhatsApp groups, and it is there. It is one single question that you can answer, and we'll give the floor by the end of the session to Gabi to comment on this and tell us more about it. I answered it. I need you also to answer for her to get insights of your perspectives. Thank you very much, Gabi. We'll go back to the questions later. I would like now to leave the floor to my colleague Namayuba Shiota from the University of Zambia. Namayuba is going to talk about a very interesting topic that links feminism with politics, with women's studies, etc. Namayuba's lecture is entitled Women in Politics, the Case of Zambia. Without further delay, the floor is yours, Dr. Namayuba.
Thank you so much. Let me just get my camera on. I'm told I can't find my camera. Is it okay if I just present without that? But I'll share my presentation.
Yes, sure, no problem. Yeah, sure, Nami, no problem.
Okay. So thank you so much. Thanks, Gabrielle. I enjoyed the presentation. And I would like to welcome everybody that's here. So I'm looking at women's political participation in Zambia. I'm sure all of you know where Zambia is. Zambia is in the southern part of Africa. Sorry? Okay, hello. I was getting some noise, so I didn't know whether it was from this end.
Yes, we can hear you very well. You can continue, Nami.
Okay. Yes, so I was saying Zambia is in the southern part of Africa, and we belong to the SADC region and the AU as a whole, okay? We are surrounded by 8 neighboring countries. So in short, I would say Zambia is land-linked to these 8 countries. Some of our neighbors are Zimbabwe, Malawi, Mozambique, and the like. I will share the screen so that you get to know some of those neighbors that we have. Okay, so this is the outline of my presentation. We'll look at the global perspectives of women's participation in politics, and we'll look at the international, regional, and national legal frameworks around women participation in politics. I'll also give you a historical background of women political participation in Zambia, and look at also the current trends and challenges faced by women and recommendations for participation. Gender equality is a very key component of governance, and I'm sure all of us as participants agree that there's no development that can happen without the involvement of women. And gender equality is also a human right, and it's also important for sustainable development. However, there have been so many challenges that have hampered the participation of women. Some of them have to do with the way society perceives women as leaders. Some of them are to do with patriarchal systems that exist in our communities, depending on where you come from. And some of them have to do with finances, education, and the like. But globally, women have taken key leadership positions in other countries. In Germany, we have an example of Angela Merkel, who was in power as vice chancellor in Germany for a longer time, an example for a good leader representing the women folk out there. And we also had the likes of Margaret Thatcher and the like. There are women also representing certain parliaments in different countries in Europe. And the majority of them actually, according to the statistics, a number of them were in the EU, belong to the EU governments, okay? A good example of countries that had very high statistics are Finland and Sweden. Finland at 54% and Sweden at 52%, followed by the other countries like Belgium and France. Globally, okay, in Europe, so to say, 55% of women are in decision-making positions, either at ministerial level or other key, decision-making platforms. Now in Africa, we know, I don't know whether some of you have read about the African history, you realize that most of the women are discriminated against, especially when it gets to politics. Like I said again, other examples like Britain, Canada, Norway, Sweden, and maybe in USA, there's a bit of flexibility, and we're seeing a lot of women take up leadership positions. They run for office, they head states, and they do a number of other things in the political arena. But in Africa, we are at 24%. That's at parliament level. While in Europe, like I said, they are a bit higher, they're at 55%, which is very good. I don't know when we'll get to those percentages in Africa. And some of the factors that inhibit women participation are things like lack of political will. You understand the African political governance system quite well, especially the students that we are discussing with this afternoon. You know that most of our leaders in Africa, when they take up leadership, they do not want to leave those positions easily. As a result, we have civil wars, a number of civil wars anyway. And now we had the Arab movement where women were uprising. Tunisia is another good case study, and the other countries in the Arab wing. So it's because of lack of political will by our leaders to ensure that women are brought to the table and they're involved and engaged in decision making. We also have restrictive, I think, electoral frameworks that are very, very patriarchal. And because of that, you realize that the figures of women representation, either in parliament or in other key government making decisions, are always low. Okay? There are a number of laws, there are a number of policies that Africa, even Zambia, has signed. But the major drawback is that there's lack of implementation of these policies. Some of them are actually poorly implemented. Countries would have signed, but they just do not want to implement. They will have committed themselves, they would have made it into law, but implementation is always a challenge. In some cases, they will give excuses like lack of resources, we don't have funds. In other cases, they'll say, no, women themselves maybe are not committed. There are all these arguments to do with the women participation. I'll present to you a number of female presidents that we've had before on the continent. The first one was Sylvie Kanengi, the first female president in Africa, and she was from Burundi. And she only took over after the president was assassinated. And that was way back in 1992. Okay, we also have Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, president of Liberia, from 2006 to 2018. Okay, first African female president to be elected as head of state, and she served for quite a long period. I think that was about 12 years in all. So she's, I think, one of the few female African presidents that has done a longer term as president. She must be the only one, actually. Then in Malawi, one of our neighboring countries, there's Joyce Banda from Malawi. She also served as president after the death of the Malawian president, and she only served for 2 years, from 2012 to 2014. Very powerful, as recognized by Forbes, and very influential woman that time in 2014. And now we have the sitting Tanzanian president, Samia Suluhu Hasan from Tanzania. She recently visited Zambia. She paid a state visit to our country, I think a few months ago. She took over also after the death of the Tanzanian president and has been president since March 2021. One fascinating thing about her leadership is that when she took over as president, she appointed a number of female ministers in key positions. For instance, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is female, the Minister of Home Security is female, and so that shows that she has the political will to give the women an opportunity to lead and take up those leadership positions. That's the presentation on Africa. Now I'll get back to Zambia. Like I earlier said, Zambia is land-linked to 8 countries. And among those countries who've helped a number of them become independent, that's Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, to some extent even Malawi. Zambia has been very, very active in ensuring that these countries become independent. Even South Africa itself, and that was the latest country that we helped. Most of the refugees, political refugees, have stayed in our country before, even from Namibia, from South Africa and the like. They've all come and stayed in our country until their countries obtained independence. So that's how crucial Zambia is. But however, in the SADC region, with regards to women representation, we're not doing very well because our numbers are very low, despite us being one of the first few countries to get independence. Zambia got independent in 1964 on the 24th of October. There are other countries like Namibia and South Africa. South Africa just got independence in 1994, the youngest, I think, in the region. But the others are older. But despite that, South Africa is ahead of us, Namibia is ahead of us, Malawi is equally ahead of us, Zimbabwe is doing a bit well, Tanzania is also quite ahead of us because of the legal frameworks that they have put in place to ensure that women participate in politics and decision-making. Some of them are maybe the use of the quota system. Some of them also have to do with, like I said, the political will. If the president wants to give an opportunity for women to lead and is able to do that through having a very good constitution or very good legal system, that works very, very well. And we've seen it work in other neighboring countries, especially South Africa. I think South Africa is a very good example, but Tanzania is coming up as well. Rwanda is good, but Rwanda is a special case. And we're not going to talk about Rwanda in this particular discussion. So a few statistics about Zambia. Zambia as a country has 10 provinces, okay, with a population of about 20 million people. Lusaka, the capital city, is highly populated with 3 million people, followed by the Copperbelt province, which has close to 3 as well at 2.7. And the males make up 9.6 million of the population, while the females are at 10 million. We are at 51% as females, and we are the majority electorates. Most of the women activities when it comes to politics is seen in their participation in rallies, in demonstrations, and in voting. And some of them play another role that is very low when it comes to the political arena, where they dance. If you are familiar with African politics, most of them dance when the presidents are doing their campaigns. Others cook for the men who are campaigning. Others provide some sort of security. So they do all those roles, but they are not elected in decision-making positions because of a few factors that we'll consider in the presentation. So I'm sure you know this man. This is our first president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. In his first cabinet, I want to give you a historical perspective. In his first cabinet, he had 15 ministers, and all of them were male. That's just after independence. So you can see where the problem started from. And even before, when they were fighting for independence, some women participated in the uprisings, some participated in demonstrations, some were educated enough to take up leadership positions, but they were not given the opportunity. And we saw it in his first cabinet, which had only males, very male dominated. and it was aligned to a particular tribe, but I'm not going to look at that. But this is where I think problems emanate from. And he ruled for 27 years. So after his rule, we decided to see a few changes when Zambia became a democratic country in 1991 over the engagement of women in political participation and decision-making positions. A number of them had gotten in education, even before a few had that education. But by 1991, a lot of women at least had gotten education, if education was an excuse for them not being involved. And a number of them had participated at international level in various platforms, and they were ready to take up leadership positions. But they were not still given that leverage to do that because of male dominance in the political, sector. So this is this is the first cabinet that the first president had. As you can see, they were all males. Suffice to say, some of them were very youthful, actually. Not all of them were old. We had a few that were quite younger, and some of them were even appointed to diplomatic positions, but none were female. Okay, I think I've given a background to this. So when the first president took over, a few women were identified for leadership positions, and some of them were given positions as permanent secretaries or deputy ministers, ambassadors, or high commissioners. But the numbers were still very low. And the presidential nominations that were done by the president himself, they were still mainly tribal and mainly male-dominated. He still appointed his fellow male colleagues, and he still appointed people from one tribe, creating an imbalance among people. Zambia is a big, vast country with 73 tribes and 7 major tribes. But during this particular time, only one tribe was dominating, but I'm not going to do that. And that's the trend that you've seen, even in the last elections. We had debates over tribalism and other things because of this background. I'm not going to talk about the MMD government, but after the one-party state by Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, we had the beginning of multi-party system, and Frederick Chiluba became the first president in 1991. Then he was followed by a very well-known lawyer, Levi Mwanawasa, who took over and did his best, appointed a few women as well, but he was one of the best presidents that Zambia has had. After him, we had another famous president who was also in the first cabinet, Mr. Banda, and when he died, sorry, he didn't even die. When he lost an election, the Patriotic Front took over, and again, we didn't see a lot of women taking over leadership positions, but trends were beginning to change. And now, in the current government, we have, I think things have changed a bit, because even in the previous government, we had a situation where there was a provision in the constitution that if the president is male, the running mate must be female. And if the president is female, the running mate should be male, to ensure that we promote 50% representation at decision at that level. And so in the last government, under the last party, we had the president who was male, and he identified a running mate who was female, and that was Inonge Wina. That was the first female vice president Zambia has ever had. And when they lost, we also got Mrs. Mutalena Lumango, who's the current vice president. She's an educationist by profession, and she's served the government before, even as deputy speaker at that level.
5 minutes left, if you may, Dr. Namayuba. 5 minutes left,
yes,
please.
Yes, please. I'll be very fast. This is the current cabinet. It has 26 ministers, and only 3 of them are female, and they've been given very low positions. So like I said, most of the government is really male dominated, and there have been no improvements made. If you look at the percentages, they've always been low. The highest that we've had in terms of female representation was at, the highest we had was at 14%. That is in 2006 to 2008. That's the highest so far. Yeah. And currently we are at 13%. We've gone down. So why should women be engaged in decision-making positions? For policy impact, it's important that women are involved. And also, women should participate to ensure that they make meaningful decisions at that level. In any country, if you leave out women, it means you've left out a bigger number of people in that particular country. So if we engage them, it means we'll be well represented. And also conventions such as CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and other regional protocols such as the African Union Protocol on Women's Representation, and also the Maputo Protocol and the SADC Protocol, all call for inclusion in decision-making for women. Even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it also promotes women involvement. So that's very, very cardinal. I've briefly discussed that, so I'm not going to look at those presentations. At national level, we have a very good constitution which guarantees equality between men and women. And when there's a provision for the president, like I said, to nominate MPs at parliamentary level, but usually what happens is that the people that are nominated are mainly male. But for the first time around under this particular government, we saw a number being nominated, which is quite good. But still, the figures are very low. So we also have an act that has led to the domestication of CEDAW, which is the Gender Equity and Equality Act. Implementation of that act is very, very weak. It has very progressive provisions, but like I said, nothing has been implemented out of that act that can push the agenda forward. As a result, women continue lagging behind. And some of the reasons why they continue lagging behind is lack of resources. It's expensive to run a successful campaign. Recently, so there are some Americans that did a study on Zambia and Malawi. Women in Zambia spent so much money in campaigns compared to women in Malawi, but Malawi has better numbers than us. Our campaigns are extremely expensive because the nomination fees are also unaffordable. They're extremely high for any ordinary woman to be able to participate in politics. The other reason also is because of the patriarchal nature of our societies. Most societies are highly patriarchal. There's also a restriction on education. If you want to stand as a parliamentary leader or at local level, you need to have a high school leaver certificate. So if you don't have that, you can't contest. So that prevents so many women from participating because most of them don't have that education. And they're not able to participate because the illiteracy levels among women are very high compared to the male folks. So that also hampers the participation of women. And also there's a lot of societal discrimination, and media portrays women in a very negative way. There's a lot of violence against women right in politics. And all of us as stakeholders are aware, but there's very little that is being done. As a result, women shun getting involved in politics for fear of being discriminated. The recommendations that can be put forward to promote women inclusion, some of them involve democratizing the whole process. I know Zambia is a democratic country. Recently, we hosted the Summit for Democracy. We're given the opportunity to do that, but we're still far from getting where we want to. Like I said, it's all because of the factors that have been highlighted above. But some of the recommendations would still be increase the democratization process, allow people to have freedom of speech, allow people to have freedom of assembly, allow people to have access to information, and use media in a very sustainable and very good way. Education, like I said, also hampers women participation, but for the first time in Zambia, actually second time, education has been given to everybody who's eligible free of charge. So we have free education up to high school level. It will take us a bit of time before we get all the women get to school, but at least there's an opportunity for you if you want to get involved in politics to go back to school and learn and prepare to take up those leadership positions. And also what the government has done is to adopt very gender sensitive policies. For instance, even in other countries, I'm sure, there are special machineries for women that can encourage women participation. It may be a Ministry of Gender, it may be a Commission of Gender, it may be all other platforms where women can feel free to participate and engage. The role of the church and the role of traditional leaders and civil society organizations also is very critical, and we've seen it help a lot. Here, because most women belong to some church organization, you find that 80% of them go to some church. And you know, the doctrines around there, they're told, no, women should not participate. Women should just sit and listen to their husbands. A woman who's single is perceived as a prostitute if they engage in politics. There are all these discriminatory issues around women participation. So this is what CSOs, the church and faith-based organizations can try and help improve women participation in politics. And now we have a decentralization policy in place. Most of our governance systems are getting decentralized, and even more money is getting to the rural or local levels. So we have an opportunity of seeing more women access funds for empowerment, access education, and access certain services that they couldn't because of the decentralization process. And we hope that this, maybe in 10 years to come or 5, we'll see the increased participation of women in governance and in decision-making processes. Thank you. I think I'm done. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Namayo Bashiota from University of Zambia for this comprehensive and extensive description of the situation of women in politics in Africa in general, and particularly the case of Zambia. This is very important, I think, for my students as well, who are addressing issues related to feminism, feminist discourse, women's studies, etc. And it is important to have all of these details in the background when addressing the notions of feminism, gender studies, gender bias, in language studies and in literary studies as well. It's important to have them the background indeed. So thank you very much, in fact, and I'm sure a number of questions will be addressed to you at the end of this presentation. The last speaker today is Dr. Shahrayar Haidar from University of Dhaka. His lecture is entitled Human Diversity, Disability and Ability, General Understanding. Dr. Shahrayar Haidar is the present chairman and associate professor, Department of Special Education, Institute of Education and Research, University of Dhaka. He holds a PhD from Monash University, Australia, where he explored the digital technology experience of disabled learners in higher education institutes. He has conducted various academic studies on diversity with a special focus on disability. His main teaching and research interests are autism spectrum disorder, digital technology for disabled learners, intersectionality, and gender education. Dr. Haidar co-authored book Visual Impairment and Education in Bengali Language, won the Bangladesh University Grants Commission Best Textbook Award in 2009. He has published 2 other books titled Supporting Children with Special Education Needs, 2021, and Handbook of Disability, 2021. His recent edited book, Gender Perspectives, is awaiting publication. Without further delay, the floor is yours, Dr. Shahrayar Haidar.
Thank you very much, my dear friend Mimon Meliti. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. A very good evening from the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka. It's almost 8:30 in the night here. And my name is, as Mimon said, Muhammad Shahrayar Haidar. And I'm going to present my today's speech on general understanding, about disability. I think within few minutes you can see a slide. Yes, I think you can see my slide. Can you see my slide, Mimi?
Yes, I confirm. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Today, I will be talking about a very basic understanding about diversity and disability. As Mimun said, I'm an associate professor at the Department of Special Education, so my expertise is on disability and inclusion. And at the very beginning, I would like to say that I was a little bit reluctant to that the other presenter, they're talking about more about language and translation and English language, etc. Then Mimon said that they will be happy to listen for me about disability. So I prepared a very basic slides, a few slides, 10 or 11, and I hope I will finish between my time frame. So Bangladesh is in South Asia. It's India is all around us. You can see from the map, and we have a small border with the Myanmar. So here is Bangladesh, a small country in South Asia, and I work here. This is University of Dhaka. It was established in 1921 in the then British India. We got liberated from British rulers from in 1947. Then we became Pakistan, and in 1971 we again got liberated from Pakistan and become an independent country named Bangladesh. And this university is more than 100 years old, and I'm working here in the Institute of Education and Research. So let's start talking about today's topic. I will talk about diversity at the beginning. I know we all are different, that we all know, and but the thing is, in some occasions we forget about it. In which occasions we forget that we are different? When it comes about people with disability, when it is about negotiating with others' view, others' culture, then we forget everything. But we know in the whole world, we look different, we eat different, we talk different. My language is quite different than your language. Tunisian language is quite different than me. So we have diversity. That means we have differences. And these differences sometimes become should I say that it is sometimes diversity creates priority and sometimes diversity creates inequality. Let's talk more about how we perceive diversity in our everyday. Actually, the term diversity says that we need to accept all the differences, and we need to accept the differences between the culture and the values and beliefs, and of course the differences of choices.
Dr. Haidar?
Yes.
Just to notify you that we are not seeing the slides. We are seeing only slide 1.
Oh, it happened yesterday with Pierre. I don't know why it's happening.
Yeah, if you go to, now they are moving. Now we are seeing concept of diversity slide.
Sure, then let me go to the, now?
Yes, we can see concept of diversity slide now.
And you can see the next slide, how diversity is ignored. No?
No, not yet.
So I think I should go with this view. I'm sorry, because I was trying to make it larger slideshow, but I think there is a problem when I'm trying to slideshow. So I think that's visible to everyone in the screen. Is it too small in the hall?
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine.
It's okay. Everyone can see, huh? Okay.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So it says that it is about acceptance and respecting. And respecting, it should be the mutual respect for the qualities and experiences that are different from our own. Like, I have one kind of experience, I have one kind of quality. I shouldn't think that that is the best thing in the world. I should think about there are some differences in the qualities that I possess, and there are some differences in the experiences. So I should respect all the things and I should accept that. And there are some dimensions that the race is different, the ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. And my focus is about the physical and intellectual abilities, the differences in physical and intellectual abilities, that we'll talk later about the disabilities. And it is also the diversity also is understanding and appreciating interdependence of humanity, rights, cultures, values, and the natural environments. And it says that it is somehow, it is beyond the simple tolerance. And we must embrace and celebrate the huge dimensions that every individual has. But the thing is, in our, I'm sorry for that, in our everyday life, somehow we ignored. I need to slideshow for this because I have several photographs. I think you can show my first photograph here, that how the differences we have are ignored in our world. You can see a picture that in a jungle there are so many animals like elephant, monkeys, penguins, and fox, and even a fish in a fish tank. But the selection committee, they say that the exam, all they have to take is climbing the tree. Look, in here, only the monkey, he will be qualified, and the most I must say that elephant, he will fail in this exam. Can we say that the elephant is not capable of and the monkey is the best one? We cannot. But this is happening. We are ignoring the diversity and we are setting rules according to the prioritized, or the, I must say that the haves, according to Karl Marx, haves and have-nots. The world is ruling by the haves. So we are setting rules depending on what we have, and we are saying to other people that you don't have that. Similarly, we always try to make the people who doesn't seems like us, like in this photo, it's a two-pin plug, and the boy, the kid, is a three-pin plug. And the two-pin plug people, they are forcing the three-pin plug boy to become a two-pin plug. It is a very, very symbolic picture of our ignorance to diversity. Somehow we cannot tolerate the diversity. And in the schools, what's happening? In the school, the teacher, or in the university, we are shaping the idea and the prospects of the students similar to us. We are not allowing them to have different ideas or different thoughts. I can remember one experience from my childhood, that once I draw a crow and painted blue. Then my teacher, she said that you will never see a crow which is blue. Look, I did, because I thought that how it will be looking if a crow I painted blue. It would be my imagination, but maybe it was beyond the context and beyond the cultural practices and beyond the universal rule. So my teacher asked me to erase the color and paint it black. And everybody has their different way, even suicide. You can see in the funny picture that the fish will not go under the water to commit suicide, that all the human does. A fish will rather use a balloon to get out of the water. and that will kill him. So all the people in the world, we have our different ways and different style, and diversity is to acknowledge their differences. To me, diversity is that. And look, here are so many cups, few cups of the coffee, and the milk is different. One is black coffee that some people likes, and some people likes more milk, and some people likes a light milk. So our preferences are different. What will happen that if a person doesn't take milk in their coffee, but they have to take milk because using milk in the coffee is accepted by most of the people in the world. This is not acceptable. But this picture, this says about the diversity. Diversity sometimes is about our preference of living a life. Can you see my? Could you see my other slides or no?
We are still in how diversity is ignored. Now we see disability.
This one. I was
It's
talking
moving.
about this one.
Now, which one you prefer?
Yeah, yep.
Coffee.
This
Yeah,
one.
coffee. Yeah, I would love to have coffee now.
I talked about this one, that in a table you have so many cups of coffees,
Yeah,
with milk,
I like
without milk, light milk, and more milk. So it is our preference that which we will like, what is our choice. So diversity says that we should honor the differences of choices, differences of individual qualities, and differences of culture, values, and everything. Let's talk about disability now. From the picture, you can see that we cannot ignore a disability. Disability is a fact. Some people have disability. But the thing is, what we should do, we should focus on their ability, not on the dis. We should focus on their ability. With that point, let's talk a little bit about disability and another term, impairment. I expect that you all of you heard about impairment and disability, but there is a slight difference between impairment and disability. Impairment say that there is some issues with our body functions and structures, and disability is when someone cannot perform their life habits. Life habits means their daily life, daily living activities, and their roles that they cannot do because of the negative impact of their environment and or their personal attributes. So disability can occur because of two factors. One is personal factor and the another is environmental factor. The personal factors could be individual health condition, but personal abilities of a person. That could be because of any health issues or because of any accidents, like physical disability sometimes occurs because of any accident, amputation and another thing. And sometimes people lost their vision because of some malpractices or some diseases. So many things can happen in their personal side. And the another side that could bring disability to the person is the environmental factors. And the environmental factors could be the people around them who are difficult or unhelpful, or the physical access is inaccessible. Like one person who has impairment, like he has amputated legs that he cannot walk and he cannot stand because of his issues. So he uses wheelchair. So if any building that doesn't have any ramp or lift, so that person, because of the inaccessibility, he will become disabled to enter that building. But he has impairment. That is true. His impairment is in his leg or in his waist. Because of that, he cannot walk or stand. But disability can occur due to the environment as well. From this picture, I can make it more clear that which is in which picture there is disability and which picture there is impairment. Look at the left hand side photo. There is one person is sitting and he is looking at the girl with wheelchair, and the girl is trying to grab something that is not in her reach. So the environment, because someone put that thing that the girl needs to that level. The girl never put that thing over there because she can stand. So someone was not thoughtful about the need of that girl. So the second thing is the person who is sitting beside her seems unhelpful. So he is not showing any action to support the girl to grab that one. So this one is disability, because we have two issues here. Not friendly people around the people who has disability, and the environment, like the thing she is trying to grab is beyond her reach. Someone put that thing beyond her reach. So that is not accessible to her. And the photo on the right hand side, we can see a lady. She's a doctor and she has physical disability. She's using a crutch, but still now she's capable of doing her role that I said in previous slide, that sometimes the life habit means our daily living activities of the role, and the disability says that there are some barriers to perform our life habits, our roles. But in this scenario, the doctor, she can perform her roles. And the thing is, the environment is so friendly, she could use a table which is a little bit higher than normal height, that she can check the chest of the little boy without bending down. So this one, she has impairment, but the environment is accessible and friendly to her. So I think I can make a difference between the impairment and disability. Impairment is to the right hand side, the doctor. She is impaired, but she has very little impact of disability on her because the environment is accessible and she can do her role. But the photograph on the left hand side, it is disability, because despite the lady, the girl who is on the wheelchair, she could overcome the this impairment that she has if the environment would be helpful and accessible. So left
Dr.
side
Haidar,
photograph is
3 minutes left, if you may.
yep.
3 minutes left, Dr.
Yes,
Haidar, if you may.
yes,
Thank you.
yes. I'm very end of that thing. Uh, Now we will talk about disability models. We have the model says that how we see disability. The model says that how one can see the disability. We have four major models of disability. One was charity model at the beginning. We had a charity model, and in some countries we still have the charity model. We think that whatever I do is enough for the people with disabilities. And the medical model, it is more prominent than the charity model. The medical model says that the problem, or there is something wrong with the person with disability and we need to fix it by medication or surgery or some other thing. And the social model is prominent in current world, which says that the society has the problem, not the individual. So the society needs to be changed and needs to be more inclusive. And more recently, there is another model, we call it a right-based model, that said that this issue, that impairment, that the disability issues is a human rights issues, and we must find ways to negotiate these issues and getting facilities in is not a charity for the person with disability. This is their human right. That is the core idea of human rights model. We can see in a picture that the medical model says that the person cannot vote because he is disabled, and the voting box is upstairs, and with the wheelchair, the person cannot go up. So this is his problem or her problem, that she cannot or he cannot climb. But the social model said that he cannot vote because there are stairs to the ballot. And social model argues that why not putting down the box downstairs and the person can vote. So this is the main difference between the two prominent models of disability, medical model and social model. So I'm wrapping up here. I think I could wrap up within the time frame and give you a basic understanding about how we perceive diversity and how we perceive disability in a very short discussion. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haidar, for this insightful presentation in relation to disability, ability, and the impact they have on the different topics that our students are covering. In fact, we teach English language, and we also teach them pedagogy of teaching and learning and ways of adapting and appropriating the way we teach, the way we learn, the way we assess also, to meet the requirements and the needs of the learners. And as you certainly know, learners are different. They have different needs, different learning styles, but also we have learners with special needs or disabled learners that need to be taken into consideration in teaching, whether in primary school, secondary school, or higher education. So it is highly important. And the number of students actually worked on disability issues in relation to teaching and learning English. I remember one of my students, those whom I supervised, I think Nadah Sayoun, she worked on learners with autism and ways of including them, ways of making education inclusive for them. So thank you very much, Dr. Haidar, indeed, for this thought-provoking presentation. I would like now, if you may, to leave the floor for the students here to ask questions. So each time we will have 4 questions or 4 students to ask questions, the first round, and then the speakers are going to respond to the questions. Then we have another cohort of students to ask another 4 questions maybe. So the first one, so number 1, yes, 2, yes, number 3, and the 4th one, Mr. Maidan, yes. Please come close to the PC and ask your question.
Hello, it's Noor. Thank you, Dr. Anna, for your insightful presentation. So with the increasing demand for quick translations, I am talking here about the job of interpreters. So my question is, how do they interpreters balance that need for speed with their ethical responsibility to provide accurate and culturally appropriate translations? I mean, how do they manage to balance the processes of exoticizing and domesticizing under the pressure of time? Thank you so much.
Second question
Thank
from
you.
second question from
We answer after, right?
yes, after
sorry?
Anna. Yes, yes,
Oh,
Gabby.
okay, perfect. Sorry.
Sirin, okay.
Hi everyone. So my question is for Dr. Muhammad Shahriyar Haidar. In case of having aphakic students, what should we do in which pedagogy should we opt for, and how did we assess them? Thank you. Especially those who study linguistics. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sirin. And
my question is for Anna. When faced with requests to alter the meaning of a text for political reason, how should the translator uphold ethical standards?
right, thank you. And the last question from Mr. Midani.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and good evening. We see we have different timings. My remark, it's not a question, is to the third lecturer, Mr. Haidar. And it concerns the first half of his lecture, you preached and celebrated diversity. That's good, and we all really preach what you are preaching and what you are celebrating. This is in theory. Why, when it comes to practice, we do fail as humanists to show this diversity? And what is going on now in Gaza is a good example. Why should humans fail and couldn't express their humanity, though in theory we are speaking about all these yes, ideals, yeah, correct. Should we educate our students, our pupils in the primary level, secondary level, how to be humans, really? Well, this is my remark, and thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Midani, for this important question also that stressed the issues related to double standards in classifying humans, etc. That's interesting indeed. I have a question, if you may, for Dr. Namayuba. It's about women empowerment. You talked to us extensively and in a comprehensive way about states of women in politics in Africa and in Zambia. My question is, do you think feminist movements have helped successful women in politics in Africa? Can we attribute the success stories that you talked to us about presidents who reached women who reached presidency in Africa to feminist movements or not? And how do you see the future of women empowerment in Africa? Maybe that's the end of my question. So maybe we can start with Anna, then we go to Shahrayar, and then we end with Namayuba, if you may. Anna?
Thank you, Dr. Meliti. Well, the first question was like, how do we handle like fast, well, when we are interpreting and we have like topics that are too cultural. The first thing I already have those words like pre-translated or pre-interpreted. That's what I do. Like I usually know what they're going to talk about because usually like interpretations, unless they are like impromptu or somebody was like, come here, can you help me with this? But usually they are already planned. You already know that you're going to interpret for this person. So that's how we handle like fast interpretations. Like it's something cultural, and I will know beforehand that that word is translated this way, or I'm gonna keep it the same way. And it also depends on the audience. We also need to think of our audience first. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, yes, Anna, thank you very much. Thank you. I think there's another question from...
There was another question, yes. But I couldn't recall the question too much. It says like, how do we cope with translations where we have to alter the meaning for political reasons? Can the person respond to that? I mean, can the person tell me if that was a question?
Yes, yes.
Come again?
The idea is if translators in Congress, for example, or in a convention, a national convention, or in a meeting are asked to alter the meaning by politicians themselves, how best to respond to this? Imagine the situation of the United Nations, for example.
Well, I've never been in that situation myself, but we have to step our foot down and say like, it's not going to happen. We're not going to do this because we have to be ethical. We cannot change the meaning. We cannot even minimize whatever is happening. And that has happened a lot in different conferences, and like interpreters have to say, sorry, whatever the person saying, they have to say it. You cannot change anything that wouldn't be ethical. And if they do so, if they ask you to change something or to minimize something, they are making you break the code of ethics of your different association or of your institution. So we are not allowed to do that. Like, ethically speaking, whenever we graduate, or if you're a sworn translator interpreter, you swear kind of that you're going to commit to the standards of ethical translations and interpretations. So that shouldn't happen, and I would just set my foot down and just not do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to remind you that a number of students here have responded to the question that you asked, so you can find the answers. Maybe you can find them in case you have
Sure.
any additional comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me show you my screen right now. And the question was, am I sharing? Yeah. What would you do in that case? And I had 13 people responding. Thank you guys so much. And some people said, 5 people said just parts of it. You would just tell the people just parts of the ending of the saga, but not the ending per se. And 7 people, very ethical people, said definitely not. I signed a contract. So that is that is the result. Thank you. Thank you for participating.
Right. Thank you very much, Anna. The floor is yours, Dr. Shahnayar Haidar, to respond to the comments and the questions asked by my students here.
Okay, let me answer the question first. And my apology for what kind of disability she mentioned. Did she mention any specific kind of disability?
Aphasia.
Aphasia. Oh, yeah. Actually, we have, as you know, we have different kinds of disabilities. And for that reason, the teaching methods of languages and other things, it differs because of the kinds of disability the person have. And because aphasia is a physical loss in our head, and that is that the language processing area of our brain is damaged. It could happen before birth or during the birth or after the birth sometimes. So the main problem is the expression and comprehension of words. The people with aphasia, they have this kind of problem. So from the very childhood, they have a long way of ways of teaching these kind of people, and we call it task analysis, because first we have to deal with their vocabulary stock, because they cannot catch the word and use appropriately. Like my 3 years old son, he sometimes use wrong word in some wrong scenario, because he is less than 3, but he will learn later. But the student with aphasia, they will have this for their lifetime. So what we do, we have some series of activities from their early childhood that we try to enrich them with vocabularies, and we try to teach them sentence structure. And for that, we use a way we call it task analysis. That is, we break the whole process in small parts, and we first teach them the small part, and then when they achieve mastery on that small part, then we go to the second part. And it is a very long process. After 6 months or 1 year, maybe we could help him or her to say, I am hungry. So these 3 words that they will use appropriately, it could take 6 months, 1 year, depending on the level of the damage of the particular child. So yeah, it is critical. And it is an area of a speech therapist. Speech therapist, you work with this kind of people because they know the therapy issues that we don't know. I'm educator, I'm special educator. So the therapist, they know the task very well. And we in the special schools, we take help from those speech therapists to assist us about any particular boy or girl who has aphasia. So that is my small answer. And the second one, the remark from my fellow friend, uh, that is a big question, and that is not my area particularly. The world politics and everything. The one thing I can say that the respect that we can teach from the very beginning of the school, but the if you change the education system, it doesn't mean that you can change the world politics, because the leader of the world politics, they are the they seems to be the most intellectual people in the world. That is why they become the president of USA or president of that country or that country. So I think it is not about anything that we can do through our education. I'm seeing protest in the USA against the invasion in Gaza, and the police is doing their actions to remove the people from the streets. So it is not about anything we can do through the education, unless we have a dream world. I would say. Thank you for the remark.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sarah Haidar, Anna also, Gabi, and Namayuba. I think Namayuba, you have a question. Yeah, there is a question for Namayuba. I asked it myself, I think. Yeah, Namayuba, would you please respond to the question regarding feminist movements and successful politicians in Africa?
Thanks, Memon. I want to respond to that, and my position is that it has helped to some extent, but not a very large extent, because our societies are entrenched in patriarchy. So if you looked at the presidents I gave an example to, there's only one who was elected. The rest took over because the sitting president died. So it was just an opportunity that was given to them. They did not campaign. It was, I think, the Liberian president that campaigned and won those elections. The others just held elections for one term after the death of the sitting president, and it ended there. So I don't think that can be attributed to the feminist movement. No, because there's so much work to do around that. It will take us a long time to try and use that approach to promote women participation in Africa using the feminist movement. I see it happening slowly in some countries, but still it's really dragging because of the kind of societies where we come from. So there's progress, a bit of it, but because of the nature of our societies, because of the nature of our politics and our governance systems, it's a bit hard. It's very hard. And like I said, it's also dependent on the current president or the sitting president. So it's his political will to either push the feminist agenda forward or not. Usually in some other countries, we've seen backlashes as a result of that. As for empowerment, it will take us a long, long way to get what we need. But I think what we can do to not only talk about empowerment in politics is to demonetize the campaign or politics in Africa. I think because men have the money, men have the resources, men have been in the system for a longer time, they have money to do that. And so they put up very expensive campaigns. But women don't have the monies. They don't have access to these resources.
Right.
They don't even have access to loans and everything. So if we remove money from politics and campaign on issue-based basis, it will be easier, I think, for women to participate. But if we involve a lot of money for even basic campaigns, for materials, for campaigns and everything, it becomes extensively difficult for women because they cannot afford to spend that much for a campaign.
Thank you.
And so we still have a lot to do around that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Namayuba. We have the last set of questions from 4 respondents and I think a number of questions from online participants. Let's start with you, Miss. So what is your question?
My question is, in case we have, is actually for Dr. Sahar.
in case we have deaf and dumb students, how applicable is to include artificial intelligence in the process of educating them, and how can we assess that? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We have also another question from Yassine Hamid, I think so, from online participants. Yassine? Yes, Yassine is asking about, do mentality and legislation go hand in Zambia, you mean? No, Zambia? As far as women rights are concerned, yes. So are the legislations and the people mentality, do they go hand in hand with regard
Yes,
to
yes.
women rights?
Sorry?
Yes, Yassine, would you please reformulate your question?
Can, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, because I lost Wi-Fi connection. So my question concerning the women's states in Zambia. So I wanted to know about the real situation there, about ordinary women, because you know most successful women and the women who got the chance and opportunity to be in the political scene came from wealth families and those of pressure groups. So here, do mentality and legislation go hand in hand in Zambia as far as women rights are concerned? In other words, we know that ordinary families and women who didn't have the chance to be educated, are they really treated in an equal way? Do they have the chance to go have an upgrade in society, let alone the ones who are poor or in tribes or in rural areas? This is my question, and thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much indeed. We have another question also from Samira Tarshi. She says, I quote, when it comes to exam designing, are teachers required to prepare the same exam for a mixed ability classroom? And I guess the question is for Dr. Shahrayar Haidar. We have also a number of questions from Wad Bilgasim. Do you recommend teaching techniques to develop cultural diversity awareness? Again, for Dr. Haidar. Other questions also, a question from, I think, Amel Hani. My question is, how can we consider the position of an interpreter or a translator in the 21st century? I mean, don't you think that the idea of ethics become too abstract in a society centered around materialism? The floor is yours, Dr. Haidar. Then we go to Dr. Namayuba, and we end with Gabi. Yes.
Okay, thank you again. Very interesting questions for me. So I start with the latest one that G. Samira, she said that teachers required to prepare the same exam for mixed ability classroom. I guess that she said mixed ability means a classroom with disabled and non-disabled students, probably.
Yes.
That we call it inclusive classroom, that both the disabled and able people, they are in the classroom. So again, we have several kinds of disability. If it is just a visual impairment that the student cannot see, but their hearing ability and intellectual skill are similar to the non-disabled, then we ask the examiner to just alter or modify the question if it has some visual clue and if it requires vision to answer the questions. If it is not, so we can keep the same questions. But sometimes we ask like geometry in some questions and geometry that we need to draw something by our own in geometry. We ask to omit that part and give another kind of questions for visual impaired. And same thing happened with the intellectual disabled person, that if in your class someone has some issues with their intellectual ability, so we say that the question should avoid complex wording and it should be very straightforward. And we say that we can modify the question depending on the ability of the students, the intellectual ability of the student in the class. And if it is about someone who has physical disability, right, they has no hand or they cannot walk or sit. So we said we need to provide them extra time because they need to write with their hand or they need to write in the alternate way. So actually the exam proceeding depends on the need of the individual person. In our country, for all kind of disabled students from school to the university, we offer them 10 minutes extra for 1 hour. Suppose if it is 3 hours exam, we give them 3 hours 30 minutes because they have to overcome their disability to appear in the in the exam for 3 hours or 2 hours. So it depends on the types of the disability. And for the another questions, uh, what about the other question? Oh, the artificial intelligence for the we call hearing impaired and speech impaired. These two categories of students. It is possible. It is really possible. I did my PhD in technology for the disabled learners. There in 2014 and 15, long ago, I learned that yes, there are some devices and there are some artificial intelligences which can be used for assessing or diagnosing the level of hearing or speech impairment. And for speech impairment, artificial intelligence can be more helpful to me because we can train the speech impaired people with the help of the artificial intelligences. It could be through any application which can understand or which can assess the level of the status of the speech impaired person, and then it can help according to the level of that particular people. Before that, we use some software like I forget the names that cannot customized depending on the need or the status of the person with speech impairment. But through the artificial intelligence, it can assess by itself that from which level it should start working with the speech impaired person. So if you are really interested, you can get my email from me more, and I will send you some articles about how we use AI in hearing impaired persons
Thank you.
education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haidar. We still have a number of questions, I think, for Gabi and Namayuba. Would you please briefly maybe respond to them, Gabi?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The question, let me read it. I took a picture of it. It says, how can you consider the position of an interpreter in the 21st century or translator? I mean, don't you think that the idea of ethics? Well, yeah, indeed. Now, with the advent of artificial intelligence, which Charrier was talking about, we do have that. So a lot of people think like, I don't need to pay a translator or I don't need to pay an interpreter because there are many, many different artificial intelligence tools. I'm sorry, where you can just say something and then we'll just say it into the other language. And what I think is like nothing will replace interpreters and nothing will replace translators. Even with ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, I think people need to introduce the correct input in order for the translation to be successful. Oh, mon Dieu, so sorry.
Okay.
So if you don't introduce the correct input, like this translation is going to this sort of audience, and don't use these words or try to focus on this part of the continent, because for example in America, the continent, we have different standards of language. We have Central American language or we have South American Spanish, I mean. So depending on the place where the translation is going, that's how you have to use the vocabulary. So even with artificial intelligence, you need to be able to tell the machine, okay, this translation is going to Peru, so try to use language that people in Peru would use, and things like that. So I think with technology and with the question here was exactly ethics. It's in the era of materialism. Yeah, of course, a lot of people think that we shouldn't pay interpreters or that we earn too much money for that, but they don't know what is behind everything we do. Like behind my interpretation is years and years of practice, years of work, years of research, and also with the translation. So I think nothing will replace us, and ethics should always prevail. That would be my response to that question. And also, if you have any other questions, I can give you my email, and we can also expand on the topic as well in case you're interested. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Professor Meliti.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentations, for patiently responding to the questions. Also, with your permission, I will share your emails with the students here to ask questions in case they have ones. But I think we have one last question from Khalil. Yes.
My question is dedicated to Dr. Namayuba. So, Dr. Namayuba, you talked about when we talk about gender equality in terms of political representation, do you think we should opt for a 50-50 approach in order to solve that, or it's just a matter of providing equal opportunities for everyone, men and women? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that means I have three questions to respond to. The first one was about mentality and legislation. Does that work hand in hand? In my view, and from my experience in Zambia, it doesn't. Because believe you me, we have all the legal frameworks that we need to achieve gender equality. Everything is in place, and we have legislated and domesticated all the international protocols, the key ones anyway. But we still are struggling. We still are struggling. We still have acts in place that promote gender equality, but implementation of the acts is not there. There's nothing at all. And we still have a lot of donor will for support, both financial and technical support, but we're still not moving. So it doesn't work hand in hand, because if it did, Zambia would have been a best example in the continent, because we have the laws, we've been independent for a long time, and we have the resources from all the donors and goodwill, but that has not worked. And then the other one was about wealthy families and the poor. Do they have an opportunity? Believe you me, because of the nature of politics, not only I think in my country and even in other regions in Africa, it matters a lot when you've got money. So the poor have no say. The only role the poor can play is to go and vote for the rich. Because in the first place, because they're poor, they don't have the education qualification to contest, to even be appointed. The only thing they can do is go and participate in campaigns, go and vote, and go and provide the security to the most powerful, influential politicians. They really have no say. But they're the same people that vote for the rich. But maybe what can help is capacity building, awareness issues around their rights also, that can improve participation of the marginalized groups, especially the poor. Because even if they vote in these people, they must have a right to say or contribute to the governance process, contribute to ensuring that their leaders are accountable, there's transparency, the right laws in place to protect their interests as well. But that does not happen. 50 to 50%, can it help? Believe you me, we've already signed the SADC protocol. I think it was signed a long time ago for 50-50 representation. It's even there in our constitution. It has not worked. So it goes back to lack of political will, and it goes back to some of those factors that we have highlighted. I highlighted in the presentation. So we still have a long, long way to go. Maybe with the quota systems, or maybe with the zebra system that Namibia and other countries are implementing, that would work. But it has not worked for us as Zambia. It has not even worked for other countries in the region, in the SADC region, because they all have ratified or signed the protocol, SADC protocol on 50-50 representation in governance and decision making. So it hasn't worked for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. At the end of this session, I would like to express my sincere thanks to my fellow Fulbrighters, my colleagues and friends from MIAS Institute, so Multicultural Institute of American Studies, Dr. Shahrayar Haidar, Dr. Namayuba, Dr. Ana Gabriela Salazar also for these insightful presentations, thought-provoking ones. In fact, we still have questions, to be honest with you, but we'll share the email addresses with the audience here for additional maybe explanations or for sharing some documents if they see fit after your permission. I would like to thank you indeed very much and invite you and the audience as well to join us also next week, November 29th, same time, same place, for the last session, also very comprehensive and very productive, very constructive lectures we will have next week about language and violence. And we actually need to talk about this. My friend Samuli Hurri from University of Turku, Finland, will talk about this. He is expert in this field and he is expert also in Michel Foucault. And that's why he wants to address this topic, language and violence. I'm sure that you all have aspects in your studies that are related to either language or violence or both, in fact. Also, the second speaker next week is going to be Dr. Robert Alfred Winkler from University of Salzburg, Austria. My friend Rob, as I like to call him, we'll talk about hegemony, subversion, and the other in American cultural history. Very delicious dish also to talk to, and a very kind guy to interact with, as you will see. The third speaker next week is going to be Preet Hiradhar, Professor Preet Hiradhar from Lingnan University, Hong Kong. And she will talk to us about critical literacy in the digital age. She is expert in applied linguistics and in pedagogy, and I'm sure that you will love her presentation and you will love also interacting with her. The last speaker next week is going to be the great Asma Hasan Almeer from University of Bahrain. My friend Asma will talk about American commercial culture post-COVID. She's a very nice guy to talk to. Accessible language and very nice way of dealing with things, of addressing things. We always love her interaction and her talks in New York a couple of months ago. So I would like again to thank the presenters, Anna, Haidar, and Namayuba, and to invite them to join us next time. Thank you very much, my dear friends and colleagues. Thank you very much for the audience, my students as well.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you. Goodbye. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Shukran, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Shukran. Thank you. Thank you.